Hi all, my name is Davis and welcome to my channel where we talk about all things tech, and today I am excited. In fact, I am very excited because we are talking about an e-reader that some people have pitched as the replacement for my beloved Kindle Oasis that Amazon has now seemingly discontinued. Now, I love my Kindle Oasis. Not only has it traveled the world with me, but it is also impossibly thin. I love the physical page turn buttons. I love how bright and sharp the display is. I love the battery life, and I also adore its simplicity. It is just so simple to use. However, it is not without problems. It is stuck with micro USB. Yes, micro USB. The year is 2024, and you can still kind of buy it. And if you do want to do more than just read, well, this can't really do that because its only other feature is the web browser, which no longer works, and this can barely connect to my Wi-Fi either. Apart from those little niggles, in my eyes, it's almost a perfect product. Or so I thought, until I received this Bigme 7-inch B751C e-reader, and it's forced me to really rethink my relationship with my Kindle and what it does, because unlike the very singular purpose of the Kindle Oasis, Bigme has basically thrown the entire kitchen sink at this thing. Not only does it have a color e-ink display, which alone is pretty revolutionary, but it also has USB-C. It has a stylus for note-taking, and it even runs Android, so technically it can do anything that you want with it. And Bigme really pitches this as a do-everything device, sort of like a tablet that just happens to have an e-ink display. Not only can you read all your content like books, PDFs, magazines, and comics, but the stylus means that you can actually do handwritten notes pretty well. And you can even record meetings and use AI to transcribe them. And that's only the default apps we're talking about. Since this has access to the entire Play Store, that opens this e-reader to a whole new set of possibilities, because anything Android can do, this can do too. So essentially, while they might look pretty similar, the purposes of these two devices are actually completely different. While the Kindle tries to perfect just the one thing, reading, the Bigme tries to do everything. However, does the Bigme try to do too much? In attempting to be all things to all people, have they created the dream e-reader, or have they created a monstrosity? Let's find out. So this video was brought to you by the Ultrahuman Ring Air. When I moved to the UK recently, unfortunately I couldn't bring my massive tech collection with me. In fact, things got so bad that I even had to leave my beloved Palm collection behind. Because extra luggage is expensive, I could only bring the bare essentials, and the Ultrahuman Ring Air over the past few months has become essential for me. Not only is it the most lightweight smart ring on the market, but it is also among the most comfortable, and it brings you fantastic and actually useful health data. It tells you when it's the best time to have a coffee, the best time you should go to bed, that your temperature is a little bit higher and that you should probably relax a little bit more. And now with the latest update, it can even measure your stress levels and you can track it over time. And they've even opened the APIs to developers, so expect to see a lot more features to come. And the best bit, the battery life actually lasts up to 5 days, so you barely have to think about charging it. And what I also love, this is a smart piece of tech that doesn't look like a smart piece of tech. And that's pretty much the most amazing part about it. You can buy the Ultrahuman Ring Air through the link in my bio and receive 10% off your purchase if you use my discount code Davis10. So on the surface, the Bigme does have quite a startling resemblance to the Kindle Oasis. Not only do they both have 7-inch displays with identical black and white resolutions of 1264 by 1680, that's roughly the same 300 ppi that you find on printed text, but they also have very similar asymmetrical designs. Now this is just one of my favorite things about the Kindle Oasis. The bezel is just the perfect place to hold it. It's like a perfect handle. In addition to that, the physical page turn buttons are simply amazing and have become a non-negotiable for me. While the Bigme is a little less extreme here and the bezels are definitely smaller, you can see the many similarities and why so many people are comparing these two devices. However, that is where the similarities stop, because where the Kindle justified its price by being one of the most exquisite pieces of hardware ever made, the Bigme is definitely not that. Let's take a look at the Kindle first. The metal unibody design, I just love the way that it tapers, giving you a lovely handle to hold onto and putting the weight where your hand is. I love how slim the slim part of the Oasis is as well. It feels like magic, and despite that, I love how durable it is and how well made it is. There is virtually zero flex, and it honestly feels like a device that you would get if Apple were to make an e-reader. And also, let's not forget that it's water resistant as well, which makes it perfect for reading in the pool or the bath. I've thrown this around everywhere and it still looks pretty much perfect. And the Bigme, well, it feels like that some costs were cut with the hardware design. While the frame does look like metal at first, it's all plastic. The build quality is a little bit creaky despite it being relatively thick, and it's also rather bendy. And I've actually had the rear cover pop off a little bit on occasion. The plastic rear cover is also a little bit fingerprinty and also quite cheap to the touch. Even the buttons aren't as good as the Kindle. The power button is absolutely tiny and situated on the wrong side for me. And the page turn buttons actually feel different from each other, which isn't great. And to make things worse, I've barely used it, but still I've somehow managed to scrape the paint off the side railing in places. And also, this is not water resistant at all, so say goodbye to using this on a beachside holiday. However, most of these problems become irrelevant as soon as you put on the included case. It genuinely transforms the device because it actually feels rather premium. It's a snap-on case and it's made of a very premium feeling faux leather material. There's a nice loop for the stylus as well. It is very slim, and like the iPad smart cover, opening the cover turns on the device automatically. The case even makes the buttons feel well placed as there's nice cutouts for them. It's amazing how much this case improves the Bigme, and best of all, it's free and comes in the box. What's also great is the fact that there is USB-C, which means that you don't have to carry an ancient micro USB cable just for your e-reader. There's also a micro SD card slot, which allows you to expand the already plentiful 64GB of storage all the way up to 1TB, and that's a lot more storage than my 8GB Kindle Oasis or even the upgraded 32GB version. So while the hardware isn't as nice as the Kindle Oasis, when you've got a case on, none of that really matters, apart from perhaps the water resistance. Where they did put some of the money into though is the display, and it is amazing. Astonishing even. But again, it's not without compromise. So the big selling point of this tablet is the fact that it's got a color display. While in the past that might have meant an LCD screen like with the Nook color, if anyone remembers that, this is one of the few devices that you can purchase today with a color e-ink display. And that means that you get all of the advantages of a great e-ink, like reduced eye strain, great readability outdoors, and great battery life, but with color. They call this the Kaleido 3 display, and I believe that this is the most affordable way to get into this type of technology, and it really is rather impressive. Let me take you through some of the specs. There's 16 levels of grayscale, so you can have some level of shading on this display. There's a total of 4,096 colors, which is very impressive for an e-ink. There's also a 30% increase in saturation when compared to the previous generation. And while the grayscale PPI is 300, it's still a decent 150 for the color content. And the refresh rate especially is very impressive at 12 frames per second, and you can adjust it manually as well. In addition to that, the X-Rapid quick brushing and automatic ghosting elimination technology works remarkably well. You often don't see the whole screen refresh that you see on a lot of Kindle devices, and the ghosting is often cleared relatively quickly. The backlight is also adjustable between warm and cool temperatures. It can go up to 100 nits in brightness, and essentially what that means is that this is the first e-reader that I've used that gives you the flicker-free paper-like experience of an e-ink, but is actually able to display more than just text. You can genuinely enjoy things like manga, comic books, magazines, and even web browsing, and dare I say it, social media and videos on this thing. And even more shocking yet, I might actually say that some gaming is possible too. The display really is quite incredible. Let me show you this comic book over here. The colors are quite decent. You definitely can't enjoy something like this on a Kindle Oasis. Now let's take this to the extreme. Let's try watching a video. Now I'm not saying that it's pretty, because 12 frames a second and just over 4,000 colors is not enough to replicate realistic images. But as you can see, it is just about viewable, and it's incredible that you can even do this on e-ink technology. Watching a video would be impossible to imagine on something like a Kindle Oasis. Okay, so now let's take this to the absolute max. Let's try a quick-paced game like Subway Surfers. As you can see, while it isn't pretty, it's actually playable. That's how quick and responsive this display is. And I actually enjoyed playing games like Roller Coaster Tycoon on this thing. An unexpected use for this is that this is also perfect for slow, choose-your-own-style adventure visual novel type games. I would argue that this is the ultimate game to experience these type of games, with that paper-like screen quality, no flicker, and the ultimate readability in sunlight. This is not an experience that you can get on any other device. But unfortunately, there are compromises. The colors, while are impressive and better than before, they still look very muted. It's kind of like reading a comic book on a newspaper rather than a magazine. The whites as well are darker than that of a non-color display like a Kindle, or even the black and white version of this tablet. And that means that more often than not, you are forced to turn on the backlight, and that can eat into your battery life. And the backlight itself isn't as bright as the Kindle Oasis either. But I would argue that these compromises are definitely worth it to have a color display, because it honestly is amazing. So the screen is amazing, but what is less amazing though is the software. So this runs a heavily skinned version of Android 11, and I'm afraid that while it is usable, it's just not very good. Firstly, it's Android, and an old version of Android, so it's big and bloated. Not only does it use a lot of resources, but it means that it chews through the battery life a lot faster than a lot of other e-readers. I often leave my Kindle unattended for weeks on end, and I can still expect to wake it up to a charged Kindle. But with this, good luck if lasting more than a few days is what you want, because like with every other Android device, even if you do put it in airplane mode, the battery will drain even when you're not using it. Performance also is not the greatest. It's got 4 GB of RAM, which means that you can do some multitasking, but it uses the MediaTek Helio G35, which is absolutely ancient. It's one of the slowest processors I've ever had the misfortune to use. It literally has a single core Geekbench 6 score of 191. To put that into comparison, a new M4 iPad Pro is over 3,500. And to be fair, this level of performance will be fine. If it were a normal e-reader, I'm sure the Kindle Oasis has an even slower processor, but this is not a normal e-reader because it uses Android. Honestly, sometimes I can't tell if it is the e-ink display that's slow sometimes, or if it's the processor. Sometimes it will just hang and you don't know if the device is frozen or if your touch just didn't respond. Sometimes it crashes and randomly restarts, and in addition to that, it glitches all the time. While I hear that it's been far improved since the initial reviews, it still is far from perfect. Quite often the screen will flip upside down and not react to your orientation setting. Sometimes the keyboard won't appear. Sometimes it won't disappear. And it took me forever to find out how to go into multitasking to restart apps that have crashed instead of just restart the entire device. And that happens a lot. Even if this did all work perfectly, the interface is also far more complicated than it needs to be. There are random gestures that only work half the time sometimes. The buttons are too small. Even the icons are confusing. Even the page turn buttons are not on by default. By default, they are volume buttons. So if you change them to be the page turn buttons that they should have been from the beginning, you don't have volume buttons anymore, and you have to take 3 steps to change the volume, which is infuriating. On the other hand though, some of the tablet features work really well. This is surprisingly good for note-taking. Well, I probably wouldn't use something like Microsoft OneNote on this thing, as it is a little bit laggy. It is usable. The built-in note-taking app, which is quite lightweight, is very good. And the stylus, it's amazing. Not only does the build quality feel fantastic as it's It's made of metal, it's got 2 shortcut buttons on it, and it feels really high quality. It's also very responsive at taking notes, and it's very fast and fluid if you do like doing your handwritten notes. And if you do intend to take notes on this thing, I would say that using the stylus is a must because the touchscreen keyboard is a bit of a pain. Unfortunately though, the stylus does seem to be very picky about the apps that it runs on, and that's probably due to the weak performance of the processor. While the built-in app is lightweight and works very well, it is very laggy in OneNote, and if you do want to draw in something like Sketchbook Pro, my, it is very laggy. But that's not to say that all the built-in apps are good, because when attempting to record and transcribe a meeting, the app crashed multiple times, and therefore the meeting was not recorded properly. The AI summary feature also works, but only if the transcription worked in the first place, which is not a given. And it's also weird how limited the AI translation feature is. It's limited to mostly translating from either Chinese or Russian, which is a very odd choice, but hopefully an update will be added to introduce some more languages like English. So my conclusion to the Bigme B751C is quite a mixed one, because in a lot of ways, I absolutely adore this thing. I love this incredible color eating display that allows me to do and see so much more than I can on a Kindle. But I feel like that with this mediocre processor, it just can't keep up with what Bigme wants it to be, which is a tablet that just happens to have an eating display. But if you do understand its limitations and just want to use it as an e-reader that can also view manga and comics and take some notes and also play the occasional visual novel game, then there is literally nothing else on the market that I've tried that comes close. If all you want to do is read, the Kindle Oasis is a far better option. However, if you want to do more than that, then the Bigme, while it's far from perfect, it is a bloody good option if you keep within the limitations. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, please like and subscribe. Please ask any questions that you might have in the comments and I'll get to them as soon as possible. And on that note, toodaloo.